You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show.
The 70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there. The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Cris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the Rite Retirement Show.
Hi, welcome to our show about retirement, how to retire the right way. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, and today we have certified financial planner professionals Cris Wallace and Graham Bauer of WG Financial Group. They're going to share the wisdom that you need to live your best life in retirement. Cris Wallace is president at WG Financial Group. Graham Bauer, a financial advisor and enrolled agent. Now, we don't want for you to wait. You can call right now or text the word VISIT to 256-937-2010 for a complimentary discovery session. Catch this show, the Rite Retirement Show, on your favorite podcast app as well, or at wgfinancialgroup.com. And remember our motto, plan, retire, and play. And hello to you, Cris.
Hello, Lou Ann. How are you?
I am doing great. Hello to you, Graham, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Lou Ann. It feels good. Every year is a blessing.
Oh, wow.
Wow, we're making use of that soundboard already.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Now.
That's right. Look out. I was hoping we had a happy birthday song here on our hotkeys, but we do not. So I just did that.
Well, maybe you can just sing to Graham.
No, you don't want that.
3-part harmony, maybe?
I know. Are you kidding?
2-part, I'm out.
I don't know any harmony.
We've already been through this last week with our discussion on AI.
That's right. That's
true.
right. Yes. But anyway, any big plans for your birthday tomorrow, Graham?
Not a whole lot, honestly. I like to kind of take it easy. We're going out of town in a few days, so I need to prep for some stuff. I might go to a concert tomorrow night with Emma. There's a band that I like in town. So, we may do something like that. But a lot of times, honestly, I just like to kind of take it a little bit slower, watch a movie, do something, kind of chill out, turn my brain off a little bit.
Right.
To me, that's what a day off feels like. I love doing things and being active, but so many holidays and weekends feel like they just turn into life work,
Yeah.
You're outside of your work and you're just doing life work. So.
He already sounds old, Cris.
He does.
He sounds like us.
He definitely does. He's going to be ready to retire here before long.
But not too long, right? Not too long.
No, I think I would go crazy. I got way too much time left. But, I think give me 30 years and I think I might be there.
I love it. Okay, well, we do have a lot to get to, so we're going to kind of bypass our usual things we bring up here early on the show. And, I think we're just going to get into the fact that so many retirees spend decades saving, okay? But then once they get in retirement, it's really, really hard for them to at least spend confidently in retirement. So you guys are going to explain how a structured plan can provide clarity, reduce fear, and create permission to enjoy your life in retirement. That is what we want for you guys so much. That's why Cris and Graham do this show. Also, later in the show, we're going to cover top financial fears that you guys as retirees face today.
Spoiler alert, it's not running out of money. The updated version from Morningstar.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll
not running out of money. Okay. But it's this. It's just spending the money. People are just afraid to spend. So why is it? Why do people need permission to spend, Cris?
Well, I think you hear in the show opener that we kind of run in the show opener. Basically, it says that, we see people not spending enough of their money. And that's exactly what I think the trend is in general, is I think the retiree retires and then there's a big concern on how to spend the money, how to pull the money. There's the psychological shift of I'm not working. I'm now pulling from that account, really my savings account, my 401k, my TSP, 403b, whatever the case may be. And now I've got to turn around. I have to pull money out of that. And it just feels weird. So one of the things that the reason this topic came up was it was about a year ago. I was working with somebody from Lockheed, one of the local defense contractors here. And this gentleman has plenty of money saved. He's not going to run out of money, unless he goes and starts buying Ferraris and yachts and things like that. Then we may have a problem. But the way his plan is laid out, he's not projected to run out of money. And the thing that I told him in one of the meetings, I was trying to sit there and remember how we were just sitting there talking, and I just looked at him and I said, you know what? I think you have to give yourself permission to spend. And I think that really resonated with him because he said something about it in a subsequent meeting. And then the next thing you know, he's telling me about all the travel trips he has planned and the things that he's purchased, which ultimately at the end of the day, I think a lot of retirees do have to give themselves permission to spend. And I think that permission to spend can come via a retirement plan. So once you have a plan with some numbers that are laid out, how you're going to pull money from the portfolio, what's the tax efficient way to do that, then at that point, you can start working on giving yourself permission to spend. And believe it or not, it's really, like I said earlier, it's not really the fear of running out of money for us, but sitting across the desk from a family, it is one of the real fears for people is I don't want to run out of money. I think we know when our retirement date is, but we don't know when our end of life date is. Right. And I think that is one of the unknowns. And then, going from having a paycheck to not having one, now you're into what we may call like paycheck uncertainty because you don't have that and you have to recreate that from your nest egg that you've saved. And ultimately, again, I think a plan just replaces some of that guesswork. I think it'll help curb some of that fear. I'm not going to sit here on the show and say, okay, come see us and you have a retirement plan and you'll walk out and you'll just be handing money out on the streets. No, you're still going to have some psychological stuff to deal with when you retire. And that's why we typically tell people it's going to take, for most people, about a year to get into what we call the retirement rhythm. And that rhythm of feeling retired, not having the job, not being, in some cases, the center of attention at the job, and learning to spend your own money at a pace that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's a big transition. And I think the one thing that has been standing out to me a lot more recently is the fact that a lot of people have even more spending capacity potentially in retirement than they were spending pre-retirement, which I know sounds crazy to some people out there listening. But if I was to just go over what the average, and when I say average, the most common type of client we see come in the office would be someone who's probably in their early to mid 60s, has been working their whole life. They just hit their peak earning years in the last 15 years, and they're probably making, between $100,000 and $300,000 a year, depending on how senior they are at their job. And maybe that's a household income with two people. And they probably have somewhere between, 500 and a couple million saved, depending on how well they saved. So for that person, typically what we see is that they're spending on average while they're working $4,000 to $6,000 a month, because a lot of them have a paid off house. Even if they don't have a paid off house, they probably got a mortgage when mortgage rates were lower and housing prices were lower. And so their housing payment is comparatively not a lot. And, even if they've been bringing in $200,000 for the last 10 years, they're maxing out a 401k. There goes 30 grand. They're paying their income taxes, their federal, their state, their FICA. There goes, a decent chunk right there. And maybe they're paying down a little bit of debt. Maybe they were paying on finishing the kids getting out of college. Maybe they were putting extra savings in their Roth IRA. Maybe they were doing a brokerage account, an HSA. There's so many different, your outflow sheet can be so large while you're working because there's so many things you want to save for. There's so many things you probably want to pay off. There's so many things you kind of want to hedge against in the future. And then you get to this point where you're 65, you're 63, whatever, and you're going to retire with maybe a combined Social Security of like $60,000 a year between you and your spouse. And then maybe you can safely pull another $50,000 from your portfolio. And all of a sudden now after taxes, we're talking about like $8,000 a month, $7,000, $8,000 of income just right there. Mm-hmm. And so for that person, they might feel like, oh no, I'm going to retire. I'm giving up my $200,000 a year income or my $120,000 a year income. But of that income, they are not spending $10,000 a month, $12,000 a month. Now, some people are, but I'm just saying the average person that comes in and sits down at our office just isn't doing that. And so the transition to retirement, like you were noting, Cris, is not so much the transition of, hey, we're spending $12,000 a month right now when we really got to cut it back to like $5,500 or we're going to run out of money. But actually, we are so used to putting away $5,000 a month and only spending $5,000 a month. And now we have $9,000 a month of income that we can generate safely. And what are we going to do with all of that income? There's a couple that I've worked with for a while, and actually there's two here in the next few months that are going to be retiring. And one of them specifically, they worked jobs where they had pensions, and they both worked most of their career. So they have very strong social securities. And we were looking at what they were spending today versus what they can spend in retirement. And I was telling them, you guys can easily double what you're spending today by retiring. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they would be worse off for continuing to work, because you're not touching your retirement funds. You let them grow, it keeps building. But the fear of, are we going to have to step down in lifestyle, just isn't there for those people. And these are not people that would consider themselves rich, or, the type of people that you're going to see driving super fancy sports cars, living in a $10 million house. I would say these are, people who have been middle class to upper middle class most of their career. So I think I just say that to say that is a big misconception when people are coming in. And if you're out there thinking about retirement today and you've done a good job saving, you worked your way up in your career, you've been doing it a long time, you've worked a long time, it's probably, the future is probably a lot brighter than you think it is. And when you go through those numbers with people, I think they're just able to see it in a really new way. So I don't know. That's just something that's been sticking out to me recently, because I've seen it over the years, but more and more recently, as we look at the numbers, we say, hey, what's your net income? You're actually going to be bringing in more, and it kind of blows people's minds.
Yeah, I bet it does. That's promising. Very, very good. All right. So Cris explained, how important it is to have a structured plan and how it can provide somebody clarity, reduce their fear and all of that, and gives them permission to spend their money. Graham, what happens without a plan? What does that look like?
Well, when you're going without any kind of plan, I think you're really flying blind. Because like I was just saying a second ago, if you are, thinking you're going to have a huge step down in lifestyle, and then you create a plan and you see, oh my gosh, I'm going to have more income, that's an automatic mindset shift that you have to start having right there. Where if you don't know those numbers, if you don't know what can I generate in income, you're not going to know whether or not you need to start having that shift from saving to spending, from pinching pennies to going out and doing things. So I think in a lot of people, it does create a mentality where they're retired, but maybe they don't feel like they're retired. They feel like they still need to be putting away for the future. And you still have a future if you're retired, but your retirement is not in the future anymore. It's the present. So when you're retired, you don't need to be saving for retirement anymore.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't know your numbers, it can be really easy to do that and just kind of be like, oh, we just have to do what we have to do. But for most people, I think, that are coming in to see us, their question is are we going to run out of money? That's the big one. Do we have enough to retire? And then B, the second part of the plan is, okay, what is everything else I need to know? Because do I have enough money to retire is only going to answer one question. That doesn't really tell you how to retire. It just tells you you can. I actually I got an email last week from a prospect who had gotten referred to me, and they had talked to an advisor recently, and they kind of just said something along the lines of, hey, here's kind of the types of things that we're looking for advice on. We met with an advisor recently. We know we're on track for retirement. We're not really looking to rehash all the stuff we already talked about. And, I wrote them back, and from what it sounded like, what they had basically gotten was someone to tell them, hey, there's, a very good chance you don't run out of money in retirement. And it's like, okay, great. That's the baseline. That's not the product. That is the bare minimum, I think. Because once you've answered that question, the 10 other questions that they needed help with were all things that should have been part of their plan. If they really truly had a plan, they would have addressed all of those things, as well as are you going to run out of money in retirement question, which is important. But again, it's the baseline that everything else is built off of, not the prize at the top of the hill. It's where you're starting out. So I think that when you don't have any sort of plan, it creates uncertainty. It creates just more questions than answers. And it doesn't give you that freedom to not wonder if you can spend more, but to just know I can and I should be doing more with my family, doing more, with the grandkids, whatever that looks like.
And then what happens is you hang on to that money and you wake up and you're 81 years old and you're like, man, you look at your spouse, you're sitting on the front porch or the back deck and you're like, we should have taken a couple more trips. We have a lot more money left. Or we should have taken the kids and the grandkids on this trip and we should have paid for it. And there's a lot of regret at that point, I feel like, for some retirees, because they could have done more, but they operated in the fear gear in retirement. So yeah, that's a new saying on the show, the fear gear.
I like it.
Yeah, they get stuck in. I just came up with that on the fly, and I seem to do that quite a bit.
Go ahead and trademark that quick.
Yeah, get that trademark, because people are going to just, they'll snatch that right up. So like the Amazon factor, but you can't trademark Amazon because that is a trademark. But anyway, I digress. And Graham, one of the things you talked about at lunch was how this is related to that fear gear thing, that sometimes we feel like families get so locked in to just not doing anything, not trusting anyone. And then the next thing you know, they pass away. And when they pass away, their surviving spouse doesn't know what in the world is going on. They have no idea what's going on. And Jennifer was talking about, the reason this conversation got started, if you remember, was Jennifer did an emotional call with a radio caller who was a recent widow, and she was in tears, but because she didn't know what was going on. And so I know a lot of times we talk to families, and we've heard husbands say, well, it's not that big a deal. I've got a piece of paper with all the names and numbers, and they just got to do all this stuff. Meanwhile, they have no idea what this stuff really means or how to deal with it. And they're going out and they're trying to have conversation with a potential advisor, and they don't know how to judge whether or not they're the right person. Sometimes they may not be in the frame of mind to make that decision. And oh yeah, by the way, the financial advisory business is overwhelmingly male. So sometimes widowed females, divorced females, single females have a difficult time, or more difficult time. Not everyone, but I would say a lot do have a difficult time talking with a male financial advisor. So I think, establishing a relationship with a firm pre that day, the date of death, basically, so that your spouse has somewhere to go and meet with somebody, with a team of people, both say male and female, that they can sit down with and have conversations with about difficult topics, once a passing occurs. So that's all part of that plan that we're talking about as well. You have to, I think there's an element of self-pride in being able to know things and do things on your own. But man, the game changes when a spouse passes away. I mean, it does. It definitely changes for sure.
Yeah. And I can say, as the person in my relationship who does all of the money stuff, I try to explain some things to Emma occasionally, and but at the end of the day, she doesn't really care too much. She's happy to let me take care of that. But when you're making the assumption that, I had somebody probably last year at some point that I was meeting with, that was definitely kind of not kind of a DIYer, definitely a DIYer. That basically at the end of the meeting was like, yeah, I kind of do my own thing, but I'll take your card and kind of, put it in the file that, my wife can call you if I die or something like that.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, oh, okay, you can do that. But at the end of the day, we're not going to know what's going on when she calls us initially. She's not going to be able to call and say, hey, my husband passed away. I really need, can you please take care of all the transfers that need to happen? Or it's like, we have no idea what he had, where the accounts are, what kind of accounts we need to open, how he was investing them, what type of income. We don't know any of that stuff. You're not a client. And so you're starting over, basically, just trying to, she might not know where everything is, and we don't either. And nobody does. And now we're kind of on a search to make sure we're not missing anything. And again, I'm not saying that means every single person in the entire world has to work with an advisor. I'm just saying, if you're somebody in a relationship like that, I think it's worth thinking about, okay, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on our finances today. But if something happens to me, do I want to have a relationship with somebody so that she can just walk into the office the next day and we can start making sure everything is in order? When we've had too many over the last few years, but clients pass away and leave behind, widows or widowers. I mean, most of the time they're in the office within 24, 48 hours.
It's
a lot of
not long.
times.
Oh,
It's
really?
usually very, very quick
It's
to
quick.
reassure that, you're going to be all right. We plan for this. We know that you have enough. And then B, what are the next steps? What are the next things we need to do right now? We don't have to go through the whole discovery process and, learn what your first and last name are and your date of birth. We have all that, and we have a relationship, and they feel comfortable coming in. So I do think that, yeah, Cris, that's a really good point to bring up, because while, again, people can and do find somebody to help them post a spouse passing away, it's just harder. It just is. It's emotionally harder. It's harder to trust someone because you're like, oh, well, my husband did this forever and he never used anybody. And so who can I really trust to do it? You know?
Right. Because maybe the message at home was, honey, I don't trust anybody. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
So then that gets ingrained in the spouse's head. Hey, you can't trust anybody. Here's the reality. There are some bad advisors out there. There's some bad doctors out there. There's bad physical therapists out there. There's bad teachers out there. At the end of the day, I think there is value in forming a relationship with an advisory firm that is more comprehensive in nature. Graham, we talked about some things the other day where you met with a prospect and they had a lot of stuff correct. They were DIYers, as you've mentioned before on the show. But they didn't have guardianship set up for their young kids. And so that was just something they didn't know to do. And I think nowadays, people, the engineers, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I used to poke fun at the engineers in the spreadsheet. Well, now we got the engineer in the spreadsheet and the AI and the AI spreadsheet to deal with. And I always, I've been in a meeting before and I'll just look at somebody and go, you can chat GPT. Well, I can't say chat GPT.
Just did.
Yeah, I know. I just did. Well, Chad will cut
Take it
back. So, but I've been in a meeting before and I'll look at somebody and you can put that in AI to fact check me because that's what they're going to do. And I think that's as we kind of start to wrap this section up here, but what's going to happen to doctors and financial advisors and attorneys and CPAs is the questions are going to get more detailed. Do I think AI is going to be able to replace a financial advisor, a good financial advisor? I don't. Do I think they're going to be able to replace a good doctor? I don't. Do I think that they're going to make the public more aware of what's going on and how to understand things maybe a little bit better? Yeah, I do believe that. And I like to say, at the office, I mean, you can run any question by me, and it's very seldom you'll stump myself or Graham with a question. So I was having this discussion with my wife earlier today, actually, this whole AI discussion, and do I think advisors are going to get replaced? And I think the low-level advisor that doesn't know anything will, because the person will come in, the prospect will come into the office, and they will be armed with data that they've pulled with one of the AI sources. And now all of a sudden they're quizzing the advisor on what they've ran across online. And if that advisor is not able to answer, quick, boom, like this, snap quick answers, and they be accurate, that prospect is going to say, well, I know more than that person does because I've learned this off, this AI resource. And so I think it's going to be really important that advisory firms in general and advisors in general really elevate their knowledge, because the one thing that AI is not going to be able to do is implement for you. And that right there is the single point of failure with most families. They may know a lot about a lot of stuff. They just are really poor implementers because life gets in the way. And as you get into retirement, I mean, if you want to take on a second job as being your financial planner and your retirement planner, then by all means, that's, good for you. Good on you. But that's not what I want to do in retirement. I actually want to spend time with my family and focus on things that matter the most and really rely on, the plan that I've put together. So I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there with AI, but I don't know how you feel about kind of what I just said, because that was kind of off the cuff. But I mean, you get what I'm saying, right?
It's very relevant nowadays. people want information very quickly. And, it just goes back to, again, like I'm saying with this email that I got the other day, and I'm trying to think of one of the basic questions in there was, we are very high income earners, and we're trying to figure out how to mitigate some of our tax liability between now and retirement. Just one of those questions like that. And I think that's one of those questions that, I think today, but especially 5-10 years from now, as these type of technology progresses, if you can't help with that kind of stuff, and you can't be able to look at situations and give people recommendations of complicated things that are going to be hard to just do a very quick search on, I think you're going to have a hard time, keeping people around, because of the fact that, like I was talking about earlier with the "you're not going to run out of money" thing. There's a bunch of retirement planning softwares out there that people can use for free. Heck, right. You could probably plug all the numbers into an AI software, and it could probably give you, it's all math at the end of the day. It's just very complicated math. So like I said, that's not the value at the end of the day.
That's
that, sitting down once a year, running a Monte Carlo and saying, "You're not going to run out of money." It's like, okay, great. So what do I do now? I think is the question. What do I do now? What should my priorities be? What should my goals be? How do I mitigate, taxes now / in the future? How do I make sure my beneficiaries, my spouse, are taken care of? All of those things after you've hit that baseline. So yeah, I think that, it definitely does. It is almost an expectation nowadays that if you're talking to someone and you have questions, I'm not going to say there's definitely questions that can stump us if you're going to come in with some crazy 1 in a billion situation that's really a question for an attorney or something like that. We've had people call in and ask questions that were like, "Hey, we are not the right person to talk to about that at all." But anything in, pretty much anything in the retirement planning space, I think is the big things that we're able to help out with, and does kind of help provide that value. So people feel like, okay, I'm just going to email or call or go in and see, Cris and Graham and the team, rather than just going and, searching it on Google, typing it into a chat bot and hoping that it's correct.
Right. I was just thinking as we were talking through this, there was not too long ago, people would come in, where they would do a certain internet search and they would say like top questions to ask your financial advisor.
People still do that for sure.
But so here's my point. That's easy.
Yeah.
Like I can answer those. Boom. Not a problem. I want something that's challenging. Bring something in from one of the AI sources. And I think that's where the advisor has to rise to that occasion. And having the gray hair that I have and the experience and the studying that we've put into this particular field, makes our team pretty valuable as we disseminate that information down throughout the company. But, and I'm not saying it in a bragging sense, so please don't take it that way. But I just think that that's where the real advisor has to elevate themselves to. Gone are the days of, I'm going to buy a couple stocks and mutual funds and trade your stuff and you're not going to run out of money. What I think most families are looking for today is that full comprehensive planning, looking all the way down into the bloodlines of the kids and the grandkids, make sure the whole family's protected, referring out the resources on the estate planning, the CPA stuff, if there's some CPA tax stuff that needs to be done. I think that's what families are going to be looking for in the future. Somebody to help put that whole puzzle together. If you're catching the show on the way to church, you're catching that half-hour version, of course. You can hop out to Apple Podcast or Spotify platforms and listen to the whole show. We've got a whole other half to go. If you'd like to call and set up a discovery session, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010, 256-937-2010.
Dreaming up your ideal retirement? It starts with a solid plan tailored to your unique goals. Set aside uncertainty by arranging a friendly, informative session with Cris Wallace. Just text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's text VISIT to 256-937-2010. Begin charting your course with confidence.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Would you rather pay more or less in taxes? If you want to pay more, don't do anything. If you want to pay less, talk to Cris Wallace to see what's possible for you. Just text VISIT to 256-937-2010. Again, text VISIT to 256-937-2010.
Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us today. This is the Rite Retirement Show, and we are so happy to have you along. Of course, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Cris Wallace, Graham Bauer, both certified financial planners at WG Financial Group. So, we were talking earlier just about how a lot of people are afraid to spend their money, okay? And you were, helping give people permission to spend. I think part of the reason people are afraid to spend that money because they're afraid of, running out of money. We don't know when, right? We don't know when our last day is going to be here. So we have this nest egg and, it's a little bit scary to go through our retirement with just that fear of maybe running out. And so that's what we're going to get into right now. Cris and Graham, top financial fears retirees have. So why don't you tell us, why is running out of money the top fear?
Well, I think as we get into this, it's not necessarily this. So the topics we're going to talk about today are from an article from Morningstar where they went over 2026 top fears. But I think in general, the overall fear as of late has actually been, running out of money. But that is not one of the most current fears, because if you think about just people in general, we have this major tilt towards recency bias, and we tend to really remember the things that have happened in the recent future, or recent history. I wish we knew the future to make my job a lot easier. But the recent history, and we're typically, kind of lean more strongly towards that. And one thing could be returns. The market has returned great over the past decade. And so it's like, okay, well, this is always going to continue. But one of the things that has happened here recently that I think a lot of people are really worried about is inflation and just the general cost of retirement. So if you retired in, say, like 2020, we had the COVID crisis at that point, and we had a really low interest rate environment. And then if you retired at that point, you retired and then inflation really took off in the front side of your retirement. So in 2020, we had the COVID downturn. Market was still positive. 21, the market was up over 20%. And then 22, the market was negative. And so we had negative bonds, we had negative stocks, and we had rising inflation. And congratulations to all of the new retirees. Your retirement just got a lot more expensive. And so that has really started to just implant the seed in people's minds that, oh my gosh, this is going to continue, and it might continue for their entire retirement. Who really truly knows? But that right now seems to be one of the big things that everybody is worried about is just the fear of how expensive things are today.
I mean, it did blow up a lot of people's retirement budgets really soon, really pretty much immediately if you were in the 2021, 2022 year. And everybody always says, and it's true, that's probably the biggest retirement number out of any of them.
Yeah.
Like if you only had to know one number to tell somebody whether they could retire, and you couldn't do it just on one number, but the most important number to know would be, what does it cost you to live every month? What do you need in income coming in between your investments, between your Social Security, pensions, whatever other income sources? What do you need to make those monthly bills? And so that's the key number, one of the key numbers that inflated really quickly. And so I think part of the reason, like we were talking about last time, that some people feel don't give themselves the permission to spend is probably somewhat in part to those rising costs, that maybe even if they can stomach the higher costs, they don't want to, or they feel like, oh man, that seems like so much. I know even with myself, there are certain times, and I joke with Emma about this, there are certain things that should cost a certain amount of money in my head. And if I go somewhere and I pay that amount for it, I feel fine. If I pay less, I feel great. And if I pay more, I feel bad. Like for my car, I drive a pretty fuel efficient car. I can usually, for the last 5 years, other than these 2 oil, spikes, I've pretty much been able to fill up for $30 to $40. And to me, that's like a full tank of gas. I'm happy with that. If it's 25, I'm super happy. If it's 50, I'm not super happy. Even though, there's nothing you can do about it. But I think there are those things that we all have that kind of range in our head. What is a night, out on the town, getting something to eat and going to see a, show or something? What does that cost? And if it costs $300 in our head and it now costs $500, we might be less inclined to want to do it because we just feel like it's not a good deal anymore. But you kind of have to get to the point of realizing if you can afford it, you don't want to just sit around not doing anything because prices aren't coming down, and the more important thing is to adjust to it, make sure that it fits in your budget, make sure that you can adjust to it. And then if you can, then still, enjoy your life, do things, try not to let it affect you as much. But I totally understand why this is a top fear. I mean, I think even if you're working, this is a big fear for a lot of people. You hear so much about, affordability and cost of living nowadays. And so it doesn't surprise me that made number one.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's recency bias. And I agree with you. Just what you just said is like, there's a mental dollar amount that you think you should be paying for certain things. And for me, it's like just food in general, because I love to eat out because I'm on the go quite a bit and, stay pretty busy. And it's just like everywhere I go, it's, for 2 people, it's $40 to $50 every single time. And if I just go by myself, it's probably 15. And then they spin that little iPad around and says it's going to ask you a few questions, throw the guilt trip on you. You're coming to pick up a to-go order. And it's like, I'm picking up a to-go order. Are you going to like walk me to my car and carry my groceries out, my food out? Why do I need a tip? So, but anyway, so. There's
real quick on that. There is one business, I won't say what it is, and I do frequent it because I like their food, but they hit you with the roundup, the tip, and the donation screen. Like they hit you with 3 of them.
What?
And at a certain point, it's like, okay, my meal was $13. If I click yes to all 3 of those, I'm up to like $17.50 or $19 at this point.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah.
I know your spots, Graham.
I don't have many. I'm a creature of habit.
Oh, we all are. We all are. I mean, that's what makes us unique. And also, I don't know. I don't want to say can get us in trouble, but it kind of makes you really close-minded about certain things. So,
I said that, we don't know when our final day is. Okay. We are all living longer in retirement right now. Yeah. So I'm sure that contributes to this whole fear of running out of money because, we know things are going to be more expensive 30, 40 years from now. And I think that might lead to people not wanting to spend much right now, right? That longevity risk.
Longevity is something we have to pay attention to. And I think one of the things that we often hear in the office from individuals, families is, well, I'm the oldest living male or female right now in my family, or my parents passed away, at an early age. And there's just been a lot of, advancements in medical, just the medical field in general. People are, I think today, I don't know how you feel about this, Graham, but I feel like today people are much more health conscious than they were, say, 25 or 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at all the protein products
out
there today.
Well,
everything's got protein in it. And it's not just that, but no, you're right. The wellness culture kind of, which is not an entirely bad thing. I mean, it's good that we're being more health conscious, but that paired with medicine, it is, people just statistically are living longer. There's really no 2 ways about it.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast actually last night with Jen, and it was on peptides. That is the new craze. Is there's a peptide?
It's kind of scary if you really dig into it. Like the people buying them off of like random people on group chats, directly from overseas. I don't know, but
Yeah, what's kind of wild about it is, if they really do work like they claim they work, then why aren't they, available more? And then you have to, I don't want to get into the political discussion here, but then you've got big pharma, saying, I don't want the peptides out there because we're making drugs that we can sell for a lot of money that does what the peptides do. I don't know. But back to the real point here is longevity and just the focus on being healthier. I think that is much more relevant today. And I do believe that just we are getting smarter. We have information that's available at our fingertips. We can use the internet and we can go get blood work done. Nowadays, you don't necessarily have to go to just call it the regular medical doctor. You can look at one of these naturopathic doctors and have some additional blood work ran and really go at life from a preventative standpoint, because a lot of insurance is not going to pay for a whole lot of preventative. It does a little bit, but not necessarily to the extent that you can go have some of this stuff done today. So, but longevity is a risk. The longer you live, the more likely you are to spend more of your money. Obviously, your healthcare costs go up. Your long-term care risk can become a potential once you get to a certain age. So longevity is a fear for a lot of people.
We talked to somebody, I think it was maybe last week, a couple weeks ago, who's in their mid to late 70s and still taking care of their mom, who is in her early 100s.
Whoa.
And you hear about stuff like that more and more, though. That is, it's gotten to the point where that is not like a crazy outlier. I would say 1 in 3 to 1 in 5 people that come in have a parent that's still alive in their late 80s to early 90s, and occasionally have somebody breaking 100. It's gotten a whole lot more common. I mean, it's gone really are the days of expecting that if you're 60 years old, you only got 5 years left. Most people got much longer than that unless something unexpected happens, which does happen. And you don't necessarily want to just plan your life around, I'll do things tomorrow forever because I'm going to live till I'm 100. But by the same token, you do kind of have to expect a longer life expectancy. So, going back to the earlier question of how do you plan for that? Or, well, how does a plan help? I mean, that's one of the elements, is looking at, okay, what does it look like if you live into your mid 90s, or even maybe you have a lot of longevity in your family? What if you live into your early 100s? Yeah. Are you still able to, maintain your lifestyle? Are you able to fund that long-term care if that ends up happening? There's a lot of other factors that kind of come into play at that point. So I think that's another one of those things you have to consider. And in a way, it's a good risk, because we're living longer lives. That's great. But it does also just mean, when they started Social Security back in the 30s or the 40s, people weren't living into their 90s routinely. Now we've gotten to this stage where retirement, instead of being the last 5 years of your life, is the last 25 to 35 years of your life for most people. Which, again, I'm a fan of. I think that's awesome, but it does just require more planning.
Unless you watch social media, they tell you that if you retire at 65, you've only got like 13 years of retirement left. If you watch the videos on social media, which is just such hogwash, I don't want to get started. Well, today's not the day.
And when you're my age, when you're 66 and you're like hearing 13 more years, that's not very many.
Yeah,
considering what I've lived, I'm like, that's not many more years left. So it is a little bit frightening when you hear that.
Yeah, statistically, you're in your mid 80s at this point.
Yeah, well, Luann, and just to let you know, you're a female past 65. Statistically, you got a 50-50 shot of making it to 90.
Yeah, so. I love that. So that's where I think of it. I try to look at it that way. So
we're going to be wheeling you up to the mic.
Hey, as long as I can talk, right?
Just get her up closer. Hold her hand.
My word. Oh my.
We might have AI Luann.
AI Luann. Oh my gosh, that's funny. They'll take my young voice and then continue.
You do have a really young voice, by the way.
Oh, well, good. Good. I just meant when I'm 90, they take my younger voice.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's what I meant.
Too.
But yeah.
You got to start smoking, Luann. Good little rasp.
No, thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's get into, because, Cris, how long have you been helping retirees now? How long has it been?
Oh, it's been 20 plus years at this point that I've been insurance and financial industry. And so when you're in I guess the business that long, you tend to see a lot of stuff.
Yes, that's
And
what I'm
then,
getting at. Yeah.
yeah. And then also you have, I have this personality where, I'm going to dig and try to be the best at everything that I do. It's a healthy unsickness in some ways. I did it
It's
when I
okay.
was playing basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and now I've taken it, running a company and making sure that we're trying to do all that we can to be as thorough as we can and dig as deep as we can to help as many people as we can. And that takes a lot of hours of learning. It takes listening to additional educational research outside of the office hours. But the thing is, I actually really kind of enjoy it. So, like when I'm on the treadmill, I'm listening to stuff that is going to enhance, what I'm able to know to be able to pass along to either my team members or to a client family that I'm working with. And, most people might be listening to a true crime podcast. And instead, I'm
Yeah.
listening to how to be a better leader, how to be a better,
Mhm.
business owner, or just listening to something, tax related, something like that, just to try to improve, my skill sets at the office and then also on the personal level as well.
So I love that. So over 20 years, 20 plus years in guiding people. I mean, those of you who have been with Cris all along, you know his character and how he is so passionate about helping retirees. And then Graham comes along. And Graham, how long have you been here with WG Financial Group?
About 4 years full
So
time at this
full
point.
years already. What?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think radio for 3 probably,
Something
or
like that,
3.5
about
Yeah.
years,
3
something like
years.
that. It's
Yeah.
been a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point I'm getting at is the fact that you guys you meet with retirees every day, or even potential people who might come on as clients, and you hear everything and you've seen everything. So tell us now about just the mistakes that you've seen retirees make, and where you wish, oh man, I wish I could have been talking to them sooner.
Yeah. No, I'll kind of take it back into the article. We were talking about top Morningstar 2026 Morningstar's top fears or worries for individuals and families today. And one of the things we talked about was the fear gear, and that oddly enough is number 5 on Morningstar's list. It's fear driven underspending. And so that is a mistake that I've seen before, is people not developing a relationship or a plan to provide some confidence to be able to spend. And therefore what happens is they end up spending too little, and they don't really enjoy retirement like they really should. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen. Number 4 on the list there is really Social Security, the uncertainty of it. I think that for a lot of retirees today, because the media is really good at pushing a narrative. The media is also very good about pushing content out there, and people get paid upon clicks. So go to the websites and you'll see all these ads on the side of the page, and so the more the more clicks you get, a lot of times that generates revenue. But people are really worried about Social Security running out of money. And Graham, you and I have talked about this a number of times. I think if you just think about it logically, if there's a way to look at anything logically anymore, but just think about things, from a logical perspective. And we look at the US population, and 20 to 21% of the US population is actually on some form of Social Security, whether that's disability, survivor benefits, Social Security in general. And I have a really difficult time rationally in my mind saying that the government is going to let Social Security benefits be cut by a third, because of that 20-ish% of people that are drawing Social Security, about 40% of them rely on that as a main source of income. So just from that standpoint, I really have a difficult time thinking that they're going to allow the benefits to be cut without some sort of resolution. Now, what we have talked about many, many times is that it'll be a last minute decision. The party that's in office at that time will be like, yeah, we save Social Security. And Graham and I will be like, no, we were talking about that in 2023, 4, 5. that you guys are going to wait till the last minute. You're going to throw your arms up like, yeah, let's celebrate. We saved Social Security, when there's a lot of things that we can do today to make it, to make it last longer. So while there's a lot of uncertainty about the solvency of Social Security, that does create some anxiety. And Graham, I would imagine that when you're in meetings with people, you probably hear some of the same messaging, that there is a little bit of a concern about Social Security, drying up and not being there.
Yeah, I mean that is a big concern for a lot of people. You hit on a lot of the best points for why that's not going to happen. But I can still see why, looking at the current environment, it's hard to really believe that, when you see the headlines and you see people saying, talking about national debt, which is totally a problem, and not to undermine that. But at the end of the day, will there be some changes made? Probably yes. If you're retiring in the next 5 years, will those, or are already retired, will you be affected by them? I would think probably not. Most of the time when they do stuff like that, you're grandfathered into the old system. That's typically how it's worked with the government. And there probably does need to be some changes to Social Security, maybe not necessarily how they pay out benefits, but maybe how it's taxed, or I don't know exactly. There's a lot of different options, and we've talked about that before, but I 100% agree that whatever happens, it will happen kind of at the last minute. Same as, every couple of years, it's getting more like every year, but at least every couple of years, we have this, we're going to hit the debt ceiling. Oh no, we're going to hit the arbitrary debt ceiling that we set. We're going to hit it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know it's not totally arbitrary, but they move it all the time. So it kind of
feels like it.
And then they just move it. And I'm not saying I like that or that's good or I support that, but that's what they do. And I've just never seen any evidence really in the history of the US up to this point that the government is going to be willing to cut benefits significantly from seniors. Also because, I mean, my generation just doesn't vote statistically compared to older generations. And so the largest voting bloc in the US and then the second largest voting bloc would also still very much like to have Social Security when they retire.
That would be me.
Yeah, exactly. So, all of those interest groups, I think, would keep it from going away. So I don't think that is necessarily what I would be worried about. But I mean, I think it's an okay thing to be thinking about and to talk through. And it's one of those things that when people see an article like that and it freaks them out, sometimes they just forward it to us and they kind of have someone to bounce it off of and say, hey, I saw this article. Can you give me your thoughts on it? Do I have something to be concerned about? And kind of say, hey, let's hop on a phone call or send them a quick email note back or whatever they need, really. Come into the office and we'll talk about it if you really want to talk about it that much and that in depth. To just kind of have a bit of a sanity check because there is just so much stuff out there and some of it's good information. Some of it's not even necessarily false, but is it, future predictive? Maybe, probably not though. So, but you're going to get a lot of that in retirement. You're going to see a lot of those things are going to freak you out, whether it's Social Security, whether it's healthcare costs, long-term care, stock market. That's how people get clicks, like you said, Chris. So.
Yeah. So that's that's another mistake that I see, Luann, is relevant to Social Security is because of some of the fear stuff that's out there. It can really cause a bad decision on Social Security. So it might cause a claiming at age 62, which we know that's a 30% cut in benefits if your full retirement age is 67.
Right.
And so what I always tell people is like, if you claim at 62 and you take a 30% cut there, and then they do cut benefits by say another 25%, even if that were to happen, now 25% of that lesser amount is less than if you would have just waited a little bit longer. So if you waited till 67 and got your full retirement amount, the amount in dollars is more because a 25% cut on that amount is going to net you more than what you would have had at 62. So, it can cause bad decisions. The fear stuff here, fear can cause a lot of problems in retirement. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, one, it can cause investment problems. It can cause you to stay out of the market when you really should be in. It can cause you to make bad healthcare decisions. It can cause you to make bad Social Security decisions. It can cause you to form a relationship with a CPA and a state attorney or at our financial advisor, because you can't find it in yourself to trust any of these individuals. So number 3 on Morningstar's list is healthcare and long-term care. That's another, believe it or not, it's probably one of the things that even though we offer it, I would say that we sell the least of is long-term care products. And it is one of the bigger concerns. It's, I guess, the people, and you said this before, Graham, if you have the experience of dealing with it, then you're much more likely to be worried about it. So myself, I'm dealing with my mom. Jen's dealing with her mom. It's now even in our early 50s. Heck, Jen's not even 50 at this point. So it's already become a concern for us as young as we are, because we're currently dealing with it. And then market volatility, that's number 2 on Morningstar's list, is, a lot of people are concerned about that. And some people should rightfully be concerned about it. And I think that's why it's important as you're considering retirement or in retirement to at least evaluate that and see if you need to be a little bit less aggressive, or maybe you can be more aggressive. Who really knows? But I think it's good to have that kind of evaluated, and don't always fall for, in retirement, everybody should be more conservative, because that is the furthest thing from the truth that I've ever heard. I think conventional wisdom tells us things like you can't have a house payment in retirement. False. You can. Depends on how much money you're bringing in. Depends on how much you have saved. Every retiree should be more conservative. False. Not everybody should be more conservative or needs to be more conservative. Now, psychologically, that's a different conversation. There's risk capacity and risk tolerance. We've talked about that on the show before. So market volatility, I've seen people make mistakes there as well, Luann, on how to deal with that. That's number 2 on Morningstar's list. And number 1, we've already really covered. It's basically the eroding of purchasing power and the expensive cost of goods today and inflation. Again, here in 2026, running out of money is not on the 2026 list of Morningstar at this point. Now, overall, it's been the fear, but it is not on the 2026. It's inflation, market volatility, healthcare, long-term care, Social Security uncertainty, and fear-driven underspending. Those are the top 5 that Morningstar put together in their article. And I found it really interesting, and I talked about it as we get ready to wrap the show up here. Inflation's at the top of the mind of everybody right now because gas prices is expensive. The cost of food is expensive. It costs a lot to eat out, and buying a house, good grief, is expensive. If you're a young person out there today trying to buy a house, God bless you, because your income, you're in the lowest earning years that you're probably ever going to see in your career, and you can't quite get close to building a house to buying a house, because nowadays to be able to afford a house, you probably need to be in that 6-figure salary range to be able to do that. And it just makes it harder unless you live way out in the country, as I would say. You could get a little bit, cheaper house that way, but to live in a city, good grief, it's a lot of money. So, Luann, that is pretty much all we got for the show today. So
this has been great, guys. Great information. Thank you again.
Good article. I post the article on our Facebook page so people can kind of look through it. I think it's good. But those are the 2026 worries of today's retirees, and that's where things seem to be trending. So if you'd like to come in and talk to us, start a relationship, understand what that looks like, go through a discovery process, and then into our strategy meeting, we're happy to sit down with you. 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week, and remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Graham Bauer holds the enrolled agent designation, but is not currently offering tax preparation services. Neither the firm nor its agents may give tax advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any purchasing decisions.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisory requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.